Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways we can work together to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ. Today we have with us Miss Kristi Johnson. Many of you know her and her husband Tim, as they have been missionaries for many years in Spain. And so, Kristi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure. I'm excited to be here.
So your new role with IM is in the area of communications, right?
That's right.
Well, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as you said, Tim and I have just left Spain as IM missionaries, almost 25 years there. And he is now leading the missions department at Welch, but I'm privileged to get to work here at IM in the area of communications. I'm the development communications manager. And since we've been missionaries for all this time, obviously we've had a lot of experience in communicating during all of those years. And I'm just excited to get to be here and to help IM tell the whole story of all the missionaries around the world. I read a quote recently from Ken Blanchard, and it said, "What we give our attention to grows." And I'm happy that now I get to turn my attention to growing the communication through at IM with the IM and their supporters. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today, how we can help our listeners, your listeners, grow their communication with missionaries and to do it safely.
Absolutely. And so I'm sitting in North Carolina or California or wherever, and I've got some time, and I wanted to let missionaries know how I feel about them, that I'm praying for them. Do missionaries really want to hear from me?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Wow. They want to keep up in the lives of what's going on with their supporters. The communication goes both ways, not just newsletters from the missionaries, but they love talking to people. They love reading what's going on in your life in Facebook, birthdays, and even the meals, the plates that you're posting. They may get a little jealous over some of that, but they just want to know what's going on with your family. So when we went to Spain, like we said a long, long time ago when we first went, we didn't have this accessibility for our supporters. So it's amazing to think of all the things we can do nowadays, but we need to do all of these things safely.
So it is different. We've got Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. Tell us about some of the best practices for Facebook and some of these other social media channels that are out there.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Facebook is that missionaries not only use it to communicate to people back in the States, but they use it to talk to people on their fields as well, their friends, their contacts, including people who may still be seeking to have a relationship with Christ. So that's one reason we all need to be careful when we're communicating out there in the social media world. Just remembering that people that they've asked you to pray for, those people could be on their pages reading it. And many of them have social media. They have Facebook. They have Google Translate, or they speak enough English where they could actually understand what's being said. The world is much, much smaller these days. So I have a few tips to share.
Good.
Of ways that
yes,
all of us can protect our missionaries. First of all, we should probably use private messaging or DMs as much as possible, especially if we're saying something kind of sensitive or we're not sure if that needs to be said out there. We just need to be careful of mentioning things that are political or religious, things like that, especially in certain parts of the world where these things are monitored. A few other things, just following the example and the openness of the missionary themselves. If they post about someone's salvation, then it's probably fine for us to comment out there. We're just taking our cues from them. Maybe we shouldn't use too much Christianese.
Yes.
I mean, words like church, believers, mission, missionary, evangelism, witnessing, sometimes those words throw up red flags, especially in sensitive parts of the world. And we have a lot of missionaries and workers who will say, please do not post this. A lot of times it's in a closed Facebook group. And so I just ask that we all respect that. Just respect, do not repost, because that's the way that we can protect our missionaries, not just their physical security, but the relationships that they're trying to build. In our case, in Europe has some special laws about publishing faces and names of people. So when we were in Spain, we would always blur out faces or try to get backs of heads. Or a lot of times we would just show our own children in like a children's activity, or our fellow missionaries' children. So a lot of people thought, were those the only children there? But that's not the case. We had lots of people there. We just couldn't show their faces. We didn't have permission to do that. And for people in our really sensitive parts of the world, we just need to assume that nothing is safe. We just need to be careful with the things we talk about and make sure that what we think is private may or may not be private.
And if you're wondering about this, as you mentioned earlier, you can send a direct message in most of these social media platforms and ask directly. And some of this is probably a good idea to even think of in North America because we're in an increasingly non-Christian environment. And so some of the same things that would work in a mission field, so to speak, would also work at home here in the United States. Well, how about like mailing letters and packages? How does that all work?
Great question. Missionaries do love to get mail. For mailed things, one great rule of thumb is to ask ahead of time, can I mail you a package? What's the best way? Make sure you have the right address. We have a directory at IM, and for most of our missionaries, their address is in here. Call our office or it's online. You can download it. Just look up, make sure you got the information correct. If you're sending it to a sensitive part of the world, it's better to not use a church mailing label or even use a letterhead from the church, just keeping it safe. And nowadays we talk about snail mail. We talk about snail mail all the time. But when you're thinking of overseas, it's really snail mail.
It takes a while.
Can take a while. So if you're wanting to send something that's really time sensitive, think about that ahead of time. A missionary kid's birthday or something, an anniversary, a special gift. Plan ahead.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So really we want to think all of that through. That's some really good information for us, Kristi, and they can find out more at IM's website as well, can't they?
Yes.
As far as and on the Facebook site. Do you have any final words for us today?
Yes. My final words are please keep communicating with missionaries. You are their lifeline. They need us. They need people in the States supporting them more than ever. We just need to consider them, their circumstances, be careful. The man I quoted earlier, Ken Blanchard, he says, real communication happens when people feel safe. That's what missionaries want. They want to have this real communication, but what they need is also to feel safe.
That's good. Well, look, thank you for the good work that you're doing and have done. You and Tim have done over the years. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate you stopping by and sharing with us today. And we want to thank you, our listener. If you know someone that would benefit from this podcast, please take it. Please share it with them. Remember, every little bit we do really does help, and we truly are better when we work together for the cause of Christ. We're better together.